After the release of the Marvels, Marvel Studios had witnessed the worst performance in all its history. This wasn't surprising as Marvel fans weren't happy with the last MCU projects, and the blame doesn't go directly to Brie Larson, but it does go to Disney and Marvel itself. For starters, Marvel fans were excited to see Zoe Ashton debut as Dar-Ben, but unfortunately fans were left disappointed as the character and her performance didn't live up to the expectations, especially when we take into consideration how Marvel was good at marking villains. The character of Dar-Ben is just considered to be forgettable compared to past antagonists because she had nothing in the arc that made her stand out on her own against Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Monica Rambeau. Viewers didn't see any deep reasons for Dar-Ben to bring the Kree planet back to its former glory. If the writers just gave Dar-Ben a deeper origin story with much more insights, viewers could have related to her more, and it could have made this movie much better. Apart from the villain, the Marvels movie as a whole had a forgettable story because it doesn't have anything memorable, and it had also the usual boring formula, a quip-filled adventure that leads to a big punch-up in the final moments. The issue with the Marvels isn't only story-wise, where there was problems, also the post-production of the movie, as it seems that Marvel didn't take its time into making a CGI in the movie, because with the Marvels, it isn't only the story-wise that there were problems, also in post-production of the movie, as it seems that Marvel didn't take its time into making the CGI in the movie, because the CGI in most of the movie looked bad, and especially with the scenes that featured Carol Danvers flying through the air and anything with a digital backdrop, like all of the intergalactic locales being utilized. Some critics pointed out that Marvel simply put a glowing outline around Captain Marvel to help offset some of those issues in the flying scenes, and some critics have also complained about the power effects for Kamala Khan and Monica Rambeau as well. This was amplified by the fact that the story felt somewhat rushed with a short runtime of only an hour and 45 minutes, all with the heavy CGI scenes taking up much of that runtime and impacting viewers negatively in the grand scheme of the movie. Seeing as this is far from the only project that incited fans' complaints about the CGI work, it only emphasized the work Marvel Studios needs to do to get back the quality that was seen in the Infinity Saga, and it seems impossible to do, as it seems that Disney and Marvel are more focused on quantity of projects that are being produced more so than focusing on the quality. But if we put all that aside, the Marvel's biggest issue is just bad writing. For example, Brie Larson is a great actress, despite all the hate she's getting, but the bad writing has made her a boring character in this movie. I don't know if it's a lack of care for the character, or maybe it's just how the character was supposed to be presented to the audience, or the director, or what, but Captain Marvel is so uninteresting in the Marvels. Brie Larson acts awful as Captain Marvel and shows zero range in her character, and the dialogue for her is so bad in this movie. When the grunts first call her the Annihilator, rather than showing annoyance or disgust for the name, she just says that she hates that name without showing any negative reaction. It's also worth mentioning that, after all, Valkyrie wasn't put into the movie without any reason, as it was leaked that there were some scenes that were cut from the movie, and one of them is the scene between Valkyrie and Captain Marvel, where they explicitly admitted that they were in a relationship. If this scene made it into the final cut, it would have been a bad movie for Marvel, because it doesn't make sense for Valkyrie and Captain Marvel to be in a romantic relationship, and it could have looked like just another forced narrative to put two LGBT characters into the movie. That just shows you that Valkyrie's cameo was put into the movie for the wrong reasons, and the corruption inside Disney is starting to affect Marvel movies. And it was worth mentioning that it was also leaked that scene between Valkyrie and Captain Marvel was cut from the movie just because Disney wasn't brave enough to leave it in the final cut, especially with the backlash they're facing recently. The Marvels has just made the situation of Captain Marvel worse, because since the first Captain Marvel movie, she was disliked as a character, and now things are becoming just worse to the point where it's becoming questionable if Brie Larson will have the opportunity to act in another sequel. Because the Marvels has been completely destroyed with bad writing and woke agendas, but even the first Captain Marvel movie had bad writing and inaccurate origin story if you compare it with the story of Captain Marvel in the comics. In the comics, Carol Danvers had a long and convoluted road to get to this point. She was introduced in 1968, and she didn't even become Captain Marvel until 1977 because she had to go through different phases throughout her story, and many people didn't know that she was Miss Marvel, then Binary, then Warbird, then Miss Marvel again, and then eventually Captain Marvel. And unlike her story in the movie, she didn't become Captain Marvel because of the events of the House of M storyline, and if you think about all the other MCU original successful heroes had, they're fairly concise origin stories, unlike Captain Marvel. Apart from that, even if we look at the MCU as a whole, Captain Marvel doesn't appear between the end of Endgame and the Marvel movies. And of course, Phase 4 has been a scattered mess anyway. But until the Marvel movies, she didn't seem to be playing a role in it at all. It's like Captain Marvel is living in a whole separate universe from the MCU. And speaking of universes, Marvel did a totally unnecessary, understandable thing in the Marvels, and it is the post-credit scene that was all about the X-Men from another universe. And this seems just like another desperate move from Marvel to make people interested in the Captain Marvel sequel, but unfortunately, the post-credit scene wasn't enough to push people to watch the movie. All of these factors made the Marvels a total flop, as the movies managed to make only $161 million in gross revenue in 2 weeks, which is considered to be so low. And to put things into perspective, The Eternals, which is considered to be one of the worst performing Marvel movies, made the same amount of money in just 3 days. Marvel has already taken a big hit with its movies. But the biggest loser in all of this will be Brie Larson, as she's now the main character of the worst performing movie in the MCU history. Most likely, Marvel will not be doing a sequel to the Marvels, and probably they'll continue in the path of not showing her in other MCU projects. This isn't completely Brie Larson's fault, as she's a good actress who nailed many roles in the past, but unfortunately the bad writing and the woke agenda at Disney is ruining her career. Now, Brie Larson will have to suffer probably from Marvel and Disney not bringing her ever again, and probably getting fewer new projects than what she would usually get, as other studios will probably not want her to be in their movies, especially with all the hate that she's getting now after the failure of the Marvels. That was everything for this video. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments, and see you in the next video.